Aoife.
Hi, Gabriel.
So Aoife Connolly is a strategy and consulting manager with Accenture Ireland. Aoife studied an undergraduate degree in radiation therapy at Trinity between 2004 and 2008 and holds a postgraduate degree in business management from Smurfit Graduate Business School. Following her graduation in 2008, Aoife worked for just under 3 years as a radiation therapist. She then took on the role of senior radiation therapist at St. Luke's before becoming the Deputy Radiation Therapy Services Manager. Aoife has worked for 2 years with Accenture in their Dublin offices and now holds the position of strategy and consulting. Aoife, thank you very much for joining us.
No problem. Happy to be here. Thank you.
So first, we're going to talk about your time in Trinity. So Aoife, we usually start our interviews by asking what is it that drew you to Trinity? Like whenever you were sitting your Leaving Cert in 2003 and weighing up your options, what made you say, I want to study in Trinity College, Dublin?
You're putting years on me, Gabrielle. I had my Leaving Cert in 2004. Which is still a long time ago for somebody your age. So when I was studying my Leaving Cert, so I'm originally from West Cork, but I had family in Dublin and I spent a lot of time in Dublin, and I actually spent a lot of time on the Trinity campus. So I had cousins that were in there, and I fell in love with the place. So I just loved the history. So my favorite subjects in school were around sciences. I loved physics and I loved history. So it was complete oxymoron really, but I loved the history around Trinity, so I fell in love with the place, and I kind of got it in my sights then that I wanted to come to Dublin. And then I kind of was interested in health sciences. I knew it was something that was I come from a family that are kind of, they work in health, so I was probably always kind of I was always going to be led down into that kind of area, and I wanted to marry kind of patient care but physics as well, and radiation therapy is a perfect balance of that. So radiation therapy is the treatment of cancer. It's radiation oncology, so it's different to radiography, where it's maybe kind of more just single interactions with patients. It's where you have multiple interactions over a longer period of time, so you could be treating patients for 6 to 7 weeks every day. But it also has a strong physics component to it, and that you're planning treatments, and it's all around radiation physics. So that's really why I ended up picking radiation therapy, and it is actually only available in Trinity. But I did love the campus, and I loved I wanted to come to Dublin. So yeah, that really was 18-year-old Aoife's view. Yeah.
Perfect. And during your 4 years in Trinity, were you very much focused on radiation and health sciences, or was there always a little slight interest in business and consulting?
I suppose I was really focused in health science at that point. I probably didn't look outside. I hadn't done any business subjects for my Leaving Cert. I probably would have liked to have done economics, was probably the one that I would have liked to have done, but it wasn't actually available in my school at the time. There wasn't enough of a take up. So I wasn't really interested in any kind of business components when I was in college. It was more when I started working that was probably, I kind of went into that. I would say that even no matter what you're doing, having an interest in what's going on around you, and actually what even your friends and your peers are doing. So I had a lot of friends who were doing business, and they were doing commerce and accounting. So I probably would have been exposed to it in that way. But it wasn't something that I really wanted to do or move away from health sciences at the time.
Okay, yeah, so it was all around you at the time, but you kind of focused on the health sciences. Very good.
Yeah, exactly.
So your time in St. Luke's then, so you spent over more than 9 years in St. Luke's. So at what stage did you want to change paths?
Probably, I probably knew after a few years in St. Luke's that I probably would have liked to have done kind of broadened out other things, but I probably used St. Luke's as much as I could. Use is probably the wrong word, but I kind of expanded my career within St. Luke's first. So I went quite quickly from a junior to a senior to a clinical specialist. So I honed my clinical skills, and then I moved into the deputy manager role. And at the same time I did that, I actually had already taken up the master's in management in Smurfit, and that's when I actually got exposed to things that I actually realized I really loved: economics and corporate finance and marketing. They were all and accounting actually was another one that I liked. So but when I went into the deputy manager role, it probably exposed me to much broader concepts outside health sciences and patient care and just clinical scenarios. So it was more around managing staff, the organization as a whole, and also kind of even within a clinical setting, I was working in an area for referrals and patient pathways. So it was all around how we would have differentiated across the different sites. I was also part of a a team of staff who would have gone from St. Luke's when it was just one single entity in Rathgar, and it moved into a network of hospitals. So we moved into St. James and Beaumont, and I was part of the team that would have set up James's. So, and that was when I was quite early on in my career. So that was probably one of the best learning curves for me. And it probably led me to realize I probably wanted to do more things and just be kind of in a frontline care delivery, even though I loved my time in frontline care delivery. And so then when I did the Master's of Management and did take up the role as deputy manager, that's when I started realizing I probably wanted to do something else. I probably looked firstly at things within staying in healthcare and moving maybe into other kind of roles in the HSC, but then I probably knew I wanted to actually completely leave the HSC frontline and kind of wider operational roles. I wanted to do something kind of completely left field. And then I had a friend who worked in Accenture. I kind of looked it up, and a lot of people would go into Accenture through referral routes, but I actually went in completely cold. I just sent in an application and they contacted me, and it was the right time, the right role. So
yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And what were the skills that you developed by working in radiation therapy that stood to you as a consultant?
I think if you do any health sciences and if you work in healthcare, you're very hardworking, and you're very dedicated. I think, and I would always say that about anybody that I've seen working in healthcare and gone through health sciences. I think health sciences courses in university as well are very tough. There's a lot of hours, and there's a lot of commitment from students in terms of their studies, but also in terms of clinical placement. There's a lot of balancing acts. And I think in consulting, the balance is really important. So balancing between client demands and maybe what internally in the organization priorities are. So that's being able to prioritize is a really good skill I think I would have learned from being a student in even healthcare. And the other thing is problem solving and critical thinking is massive. So in particularly radiation therapy, but I think it extends to all health sciences. So in radiation therapy, you plan treatments based on the kind of radiation physics and the anatomy and techniques that we employ, but every day is different in terms of how the body reacts to treatment and how things are moving internally in terms of the biology of a patient every day. So you actually have to learn to kind of solve through problems in terms of how you're imaging and how you're delivering treatments. And that's definitely a skill. And the other thing is communication. So when you're dealing in client-facing work, your communication skills are massive. I think if from health sciences, you're communicating with your colleagues to be able to deliver treatment, but your patient communication, that is an app that I think you'll find from people coming out of health science courses who've done clinical placement, they're just a little bit more mature. And I think that really is a game changer if you want to go into something like consulting. Yeah. And it's very well recognized, actually. Yeah.
Very good. Great. So now you're a manager in Accenture. When you first made the change, what was the most challenging aspect of switching your careers and industries, really?
Couple of things, I suppose. For me, health sciences background. So I came in to Accenture, what you would call an experienced hire. So I do know other people who were probably younger than I was, and maybe less experienced, who go in through graduate programs even after having a few years in health sciences or working in healthcare. If you go in through something like a graduate program, you've got a foundation that you're given going in. You're educated into the organization and things like, so even the technology at times. So working at the HSC, I would have used Excel, I would have used Word, and I think to fairly competent level, but things like maybe PowerPoint probably wasn't something that I was exposed to. I would have used it in college, but that had been 10 years prior. I would have used it and also in the master's, I suppose, which was probably not heavily dependent on it. But in consulting, things like that, presentation skills, and even just being able to utilize technology and software to be able to kind of complement those skills was really important. So I felt that when you come in as an experienced hire, you don't get that foundation that people do coming through a graduate program. They're given all those kind of templates and overviews of what to use in terms of just even a basic thing like PowerPoint. The other thing is Accenture as an organization, and as I suppose a lot of other consulting firms, it's a global organization and it's multifaceted. So you're talking not only healthcare, not even just consulting, you have operations, you have internal roles in Accenture. And then within consulting itself, there's financial consulting, there's healthcare consulting, there's resources, so electricity and gas consulting, like it's massive and there's a huge workforce. So, and just getting to try your head around that, who is sitting where, what the organizational structure is. And then the other thing would be terminology. There's a whole other different language in consulting, and there's a lot of acronyms. So that was another thing. And people joke, Yeah. So it's a big thing people joke about, that we have our own language, but it actually is true when you come in cold to it. And it's funny because in healthcare, you have so many acronyms as well. So people I would find that who are in consulting, and I'm in healthcare consulting, they come in from other backgrounds, they find the healthcare terminology really difficult. So it's good to have both now that I'm in a while. So
Yeah, you definitely have
they
a
were
full
the biggest things. Yeah.
So for some of our viewers, they may see consulting as a great career, but may be afraid that they would have to leave their passion for health sciences behind. Is that true?
It hasn't been true for me, and I know it hasn't been true for a lot of people. I think particularly at the moment, there is a huge there's a huge growth area in healthcare consulting. So I went in, as I said, as an experienced hire, and I was brought specifically into healthcare consulting in Accenture because they had a number of clients, big accounts, who really were looking for people with a clinical background. And the healthcare consulting business in Accenture is actually made up of quite a few clinicians, ranging from there's radiation therapists like myself, and there's medical docs, there's nursing, physios, pharmacists, and then you've got people who maybe have done maybe more kind of research roles, PhDs in biotechnology and biochemistry. So, and then you have people who are traditional, more kind of come through the business route or come through things like project management, and they really complement each other. There's huge value in healthcare consulting placed on people with a clinical background, and it's a massive growth area. So I think if you're going into something like consulting, you don't have to give up your passion for healthcare if that's where your love lies. And that's the same for any of the big consulting firms. They're all, and you'll see it even at the moment, there's a big drive for recruitment in healthcare consulting, and there actually isn't much recruitment obviously at the moment in other areas. COVID has obviously an impact on that, because there's a lot of demand for resources and kind of areas that are looking at strategies to combat COVID and react to it. But even before that, you had a lot of innovation in healthcare, and that's global. It's a global trend. Yeah.
Very good. So for our viewers who find consulting interesting, but wish to pursue a career in health sciences, do you believe developing consulting skills, like how to break down and solve a problem, would they still be able to use it for these students, like for a career in health sciences?
I think the skills you have in consulting will stand to you in any career, because it is so diverse. It's all about being able to adapt to people's needs. It's quite demanding. So I think it really, if you're able to, as I said, this balancing act is really important in any role, and to be able to prioritize your focus and be able to meet demands, whether it's in something like a patient facing role or a client facing role. And to be able to deliver any kind of a service and think outside the box actually would be another one. Any of those skills, absolutely. They would stand to you in any setting. But yes, healthcare especially, actually, because it is quite demanding, and every day is different in healthcare, and it is quite reactive, I suppose. So consulting would definitely stand to you there. Yeah.
Very good. And as someone who has made the transition from working in hospitals to now working in professional services, you've seen the both sides. So what would your advice be for students in health sciences courses that have an interest in working in business?
I suppose it lends itself, it's what I'm going back to earlier around, especially for clinical placement. I think you have to there's a rigor and a discipline to being on placement, as I'm sure a lot of students in health sciences would know, that you have to be presentable, you have to be professional. So that lends itself very much to a professional services setting. Yeah, so they're not worlds apart, to be honest. I think just bringing your best self to work every day, and I'm like, I know that sounds kind of corny, but just, yeah, being presentable and being professional. And I think that there are themes in both. So they're not, I wouldn't say, don't underestimate the parallels between the both of them. Yeah.
Great. Aoife, thank you so much for joining us and taking your time out of your very busy schedule, I presume. So your background and experience is an adverse and interesting as it comes. You're a fantastic example of someone who has transitioned from health sciences to consulting. And thank you very much for sharing your experiences with us today. And all
no problem, Gabriel. Thank you very much, and best of luck to all your students. Yeah.
Thank you.